50 years ago, the whole nation joined together in a spontaneous party to mark the end of war in Europe. Tonight, we hope to recreate the atmosphere of that special day. In cities, towns and villages all over Britain, the nation has been celebrating again. And if you've taken part, now's the time to get your breath back and see how everyone else enjoyed the day. So don't put the cat out for a while. Tonight, we'll be going live to events across the land. We'll be among the crowds at Piccadilly Circus, the hub of London's victory celebrations in 1945. We're with the Navy in Liverpool on board the frigate HMS Beaver, and with the RAF2 with the Lancasters and Spitfires which helped win the war. In the Channel Isles, we'll join Army veterans who helped liberate the islands from Nazi occupation. And we won't be forgetting the civilian contribution. The villagers of Roxwell in East Anglia are throwing a World War II bash tonight. We'll also have VE Day reports from Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. And here in the genteel calm of the studio, I'll be joined by some special guests. And at 1 minute past midnight, we'll mark the precise moment when the war in Europe officially ended with the closing chimes of Big Ben. Right, I'm ready if you are. So, from the VE Night studio, we'll pop down the road to Piccadilly Circus, where Judith Chalmers is somewhere in a milling crowd. Judith, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mike, and indeed, yes, I am in the milling crowd here at Piccadilly Circus. I hope very much that you can hear me now. And we're quite sure that this crowd will be swelled a little later on because there's the gala concert going on in Hyde Park, and I'm sure people will come down from there. It's only a mile or so, as I say, down the road. Well, tonight we've been holding a special party at one of the oldest restaurants in London here with veterans and civilians. They've been recalling the fantastic VE Day that they spent and also remembering colleagues in the war. I must say too, though, that when the lights outside all those years ago weren't anything like as bright as this, they had two searchlights beaming through those windows, none of this brash neon lighting, and Eros was up there looking down on us all as he is tonight, but in fact was put away for the duration of the war, in fact, to keep it safe, along with many other statues. And the atmosphere on that day in 1945, well, I don't think that despite all this atmosphere here tonight, nothing will ever quite match that.
This photograph of Molly Whiteside and her friend Terry Trace was taken in Trafalgar Square and published the same day.
I looked at the paper and there we were on the front page and I couldn't believe it. I thought, imagine the honour of being allowed to represent the joy of a nation. I thought that was wonderful.
You could actually switch the lights on. You could see where you were going, you know. I remember that. We said, oh, isn't it wonderful? You know, you could see the curve and you could see the hedges and everything. So that was that made you feel that the war really was over once the lights went on. And the lights go on again.
Vera Lynn, of course, remembering the night when the lights went on again. It's a source of national pride that, unlike continental Europe, Britain was never invaded or occupied during the war. The exception was the Channel Isles. When the Germans invaded in the summer of 1940, the islanders had little choice but to submit. For our dear Channel Islands, as Churchill called them, VE Day marked the start of their liberation and the end of Nazi occupation. Tonight, veterans of the Liberation Forces are holding a special reunion in St Helier, and Robert Hall is about to join them.
Well, welcome to Jersey, and what more suitable transport for that unique celebration than this beautifully restored World War II Jeep. We're just entering St Helier's Liberation Square. Tomorrow it'll be formally opened by Prince Charles, and once more it'll be a focal point for all those who remember the day that the islands were free. Now, it was here that two young naval officers jumped out of a hastily commandeered car and hung a massive Union Jack on a building opposite the Pomme d'Or Hotel. For 5 years, the Pomme d'Or had been the German naval headquarters, but no more. These vehicles behind me actually came ashore with Force 135. They were the men who'd launched Operation Nest Egg. Now, inside the Pomme d'Or tonight are more than 200 veterans from Force 135. They're here for a knees up at the invitation of the islands to say thank you for liberation, for helping clear up the mess, and as part of a standing invitation to come here and share those heady memories. The liberation experience passed on with pride today in Guernsey. Across the islands, thousands have gathered to share the elation born from Winston Churchill's historic words.
Our dear Channel Islands are also to be free today.
The words that meant so much to islanders isolated for so long. Today, those who were there relived the moment that freedom became a certainty. In Jersey and Guernsey, they cheered the troops as events of the present echoed events of the past. Deep below the islands lie miles of forgotten tunnels. Sealed up since the end of the war, German equipment and occupation memories have remained buried here. Today, what's left is being recovered and preserved to remind future generations of 5 bitter years.
It wasn't my fault I was sent over here, was it? I had to go where I was told, or else.
50 years on, the brooding fortifications survive, a lasting reminder of 5 long years.
We will only be forgiven in as much as we forgive. Nobody wanted wars. And after 50 years, I think that we should forgive and forget.
Well, I'm back in the Jeep, but it's not the same Jeep. Here we are in the middle of the party, and up on stage there, Ethel giving her all and leading that singing, as indeed she joined in 50 years ago. Let's have a chat to a couple of the liberators. Sir, you came ashore as bomb disposal expert,
Yes,
didn't you? What story do you remember?
My first job was to make sure that the beach on which we landed was safe, and the next job was to take a Jersey Islander who was away all through the war. It was his first time back, and he had to go to the State House. Well, when we got off the beach, which was quite clear of minds, thank God, we were greeted by the whole of, it seemed, Jersey to me. They were waving, and of course they recognised him, and of course they were crying, and he was crying, and I almost joined them.
What a very special thing. What about you, sir? You came ashore. We saw those pictures on the old film there. It must have been an amazing experience, wasn't it?
And today is another amazing experience. After 50 years, I met my comrade on the landing craft LCIL 130 for the first time since we were here 50 years ago.
Was that accidental? Did you just happen to bump into him?
No, he was there in one corner of the room, and I was feeling rather depressed because I've been searching for him for so long, you see, and finally he's here.
And has he changed much?
A little bit. He's lost his curly hair.
Because it's always a very special thing, isn't there, between Force 135 and the islands? It's unique, really.
Yes, yes.
That welcome you always get when you come back.
Yes. And also, we had a bit of a hiccup on board with the coxswain.
Somebody shot at you, didn't they?
He had a gun, and he was pointing at me, you see, and he changed it for cigarettes. And he's pointed at me, so I told him in Navy language to turn it away. And
Did it have anything in it?
Yes, he finally. So I said, shoot it amongst the German.
You're here today, both of you.
Yeah.
Everybody here. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much indeed. Now back to you, Mike, in London.
Thank you, Robert Hall, with some lively veterans there of the Liberation Forces in St Helier. Now, for the civilian population of Britain, the war meant many hardships, occupied or not. There was rationing, blackouts, evacuation and family separation. But if one experience dominated, it was the experience of the Blitz. London, with the first target, took the brunt, but few cities escaped unscathed. The devastation of Coventry in a single night was one of the grimmest episodes of the war. But after London, the people of Birmingham were hit hardest. Colin Baker has been there today to share the memories of living through the Blitz.
It's their party. They paid for it dearly. They waved goodbye to sons and husbands and waited, a torment shared, but then so was the victory. Birmingham and Brummies, industrial and industrious, had their bangers and mash and celebrated.
Take your time. It's not coming out, is it? There you go.
Onion gravy?
Yeah.
And remembered. Because 50 years ago, when they came home, some brought back more memories than comrades. like Bob and Tom, captured at Arnhem. And those who waited at home, fearing the telegram in the morning and the blitz of what darkness would bring. Like confetti, the dots record each bomb that fell on Birmingham, the second most blitzed city in Britain. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Not a day escapes this unique log of the air raids on Birmingham. The BSA and Singer factories, the fall of Crete, yet more raids. It's the record of an ambulanceman.
It's remarkable, all that going on, and the death and destruction that was around, and yet people could still crack a joke and still carry on, you know. And there was no way of giving in. Nobody was going to give in.
Catherine Thompson and Elsie Marshall belonged to a choral society in Birmingham. Concerts below ground were spiritually lifting.
Then you could knock on any door, and that was it. But now it seems that all doors are closed against you. I get that feeling.
The songs themselves, they were such inspiring songs. They gave you courage. What was that one that we sang?
When the air raid sirens start to sound on the air, we must all take shelter underground, 'cause it's so much safer there. We must have shelters, you'll agree, for every Sparkbrook family. We must have shelters, you'll agree.
Wonderful.
I love that.
That's how Elsie Marshall and Catherine Thompson made people forget all about the bombs. Incidentally, I was one of those evacuees they mentioned. We spent the war years in the West Country, and I got back to London just in time for a few buzz bombs and the V2s. So for me and millions of other children, it was a mixture of fun and fear, the war. Now, this little lad, posing in the middle of a family snap on Southport Beach, was so impressed that years later, he wrote a Hollywood movie based on his war experiences. He's the actor and screenwriter Colin Wellland. Colin, what about today, first of all? You've been out soaking up the atmosphere?
No, I stayed in front of the telly and wept.
Did you?
Yeah.
What moved you particularly?
Well, the Buckingham Palace affair. I'm not one for jingoism usually, and I don't go in for waving of Union Jacks and Land of Hope and Glory. But this was a celebration very, very well worthwhile. I mean, this was a war that was worth fighting.
You're a Liverpool lad, and you know about the Blitz. What's your enduring memory of that?
The shelter, going down the shelter. I remember being whipped out of my bed when the first sirens went and whisked down into the shelter. But my dad had made it a veritable little haven, you know, with bunks and electric light, electric fire, little radio. But the bombs were going like hell all around us. And we'd get up in the morning, collect shrapnel. Bit with German on was worth 6 of British piece, you know.
Weren't you scared?
Strangely enough, no. The parents did a marvellous job. I mean, we never felt any fear, even though we saw huge craters where houses had been. You know, and we were aware of the dangers. We were told to look out for parachutists. We all had little books with silhouettes of German planes so we could recognise them and so on. But it was all a game to us.
What did it do to the family, though? Did it disrupt it from a child's point of view?
Well, there was anxiety within the family, not from my own immediate family, because my dad was a docker and therefore in a reserved occupation. And I didn't realise he was in danger as well. But Uncle George was in the Far East, and I remember the news coming that he was missing. And my granddad, who lived with us, his ashen face. And then the news came 2 years later, he was a prisoner. Then the anxiety. And then I remember him coming home, he'd lost a leg, and he was on his crutches with one of those big khaki berets on and a yellow face. And this was my Uncle George that everybody had talked about over the years.
Well, evacuation, I mentioned earlier, and I was an evacuee, and we had a very good war because we were out of the bombs and away from London, but I get the feeling that you didn't mind not being evacuated.
We were never given the opportunity. I mean, obviously the parents made the decision whether you were going to be evacuated or stay, and I was glad. I mean, I remember those times, not with affection, but I think they were very mind-forming, you know, and brought our values right down to a sane level. And you know, which affected the way I look at things right through my life.
Now, Yanks, I mean, the film Yanks is an important part of your life, and the American forces, of course, were where you were, as indeed where I was, and we used to scavenge their camps and had a great time. But they have made a great impression on you, obviously.
Yes, because my dad worked at the, we were 2 wars. I was in the Blitz at Liverpool, and we moved out of Liverpool. My dad got a job at Warrington in the Burton Wood Air Base, a huge American air base. And the Yanks were a big part of my life. And the infantry came and stayed at Haydock Park Racecourse and golf course, really where we were. And we used to go down and we used to get fish and chips for them and get their drinks for them.
Did you fix them up with the local girls?
No, we couldn't do that. We're a bit young for that.
Well, I was
You're
9.
so much older than me.
Yes, I was 9.
Yeah, yeah.
That'd be fair.
Yeah, but I remember them arriving and a friend of mine's mother saying they're all Chinese because they had yellow complexions. They were children of the Depression in America.
Oh.
And they had these sallow complexions.
Well, look, we'll get some more recollections from you later, so don't wander off and enjoy yourself, will you? Now, in a moment, we'll be hearing Princess Margaret's recollections of VE Day and looking at the special wartime contribution of the Royal and Merchant Navies. Join us in a moment as we join them on board HMS Beaver in Liverpool docks, where the party, as you can imagine, is in full swing. Has been singing to her boys again tonight at the commemoration concert in London. Do you know, she was so popular with the forces that comics used to say that her agent started the war. Now, the centre of London is still a bit bunged up, so she couldn't make it across town to our studios, but I'm glad to say Dame Vera can join us live, direct from Hyde Park. Vera, good evening.
Good evening, Michael.
Looks a bit drafty down there.
It's freezing here.
Oh, well, I won't keep you long. You've had such a busy weekend. You're always doing reunions, but this one obviously is very special.
Oh, absolutely, and I think it's the biggest one I've ever done as far as numbers of people. It's been absolutely fantastic, the whole weekend.
And very emotional for you too.
Yes, yes. I've met so many of the Canadian boys and New Zealand and Australian and even Russian. And so, of course, it's been quite an experience.
You are, of course, the forces' sweetheart and always seem to have been. How did you see your role when you were described as that?
Well, I don't know. I think they looked at me as someone that they'd left behind at home, someone that reminded them of their wife or their sister or their sweetheart. And I was able to sort of give them a link from home. I sang the songs and gave them messages that brought them just that little bit nearer to, well, where they ever came from. And the songs meant a lot to them.
And did you feel you were singing just to one person every time?
Yes, I did. I always used to have a picture in front of my mind of just one person, and I tried to sing just to him. And so the result was that everybody thought I was singing just only for him. And in a way, I suppose I was.
There was great hardship and great sadness then, but there was a lot of fun during those days as well.
Well, yes, there was in a way, you know, and people say to me, oh, they were great days. But when you think of the tragedies, but they did also have a lot of, they think of the camaraderie of with their chaps and the home front people, the ones that stayed at home, they made the best of everything, you know, and entertainment went on. And there was a lot of lovely, warm feeling among people, and I think that's what they miss today.
This is obviously a very nostalgic time for many people, but looking ahead, do you think the lessons have been learned, that young people are aware of what's happened?
Not nearly enough, no, not nearly enough. I think in the future, I mean, what with D-Day last year and the celebrations here this year, I think it might sort of whet their appetite a bit, and maybe in the schools they would be taught a lot more of the sacrifices that were made so that they could enjoy the freedom that they have today. And I hope this spirit goes on and not just finish with this weekend.
And how was VE night for you? How do you recall it?
Well, actually, I don't have a lot of memories of VE night. All I know, I was working in one of the London theatres, and of course it was just another night for me, two shows a night. Well, one afternoon and one early evening, because we used to like to get the shows over early because of the bombs coming over. But it was a night of doing something that I'd been doing all through the war.
And you've been doing it again all through this weekend. Get your coat on, get in the warm, and thank you very much for all you've done.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Now, the Army had El Alamein, the RAF had the Battle of Britain, but the longest and arguably the most important confrontation of the war was the Battle of the Atlantic. As an island nation, we depended on shipping, so shipping was given special attention by the enemy. Together, the Royal Navy and the Merchant Navy kept the nation supplied and the war machine running. The nerve centre of British naval operations was Liverpool, and today the city has been celebrating its vital wartime role. The party's still going on, so let's link up live with Michael Nicholson and the Royal Marine Band on board the frigate HMS Beaver.
Well, welcome to Liverpool and to our own very special party here on the flight deck of the Royal Naval frigate HMS Beaver. Now, we've come to Liverpool for a very special reason, and if you'd lived on Merseyside 50 years ago, you'd know that reason well enough. Because it was Liverpool's docks and Liverpool's dockers that kept this country alive in those wartime years. If it hadn't been for the merchantmen in those convoys across the Atlantic, bringing food and fuel supplies here, we might well have been starved to surrender. It was the bravery and the sacrifice of the people who kept those convoys moving that finally broke that Nazi siege. We've got some of those people here tonight. Among them is Captain Ian Fraser, one of the most highly decorated men in the Naval War. We have able seaman Jack Bird, you'll be seeing him later, and we have a wartime wren, Gwen Frethny. She worked in the underground stations here directing those convoys. These are our honoured guests, veterans of the Battle of the Atlantic. They may be marching under their own colours and in their own columns, but the old ones, the veterans, will tell you that it was together they fought the war from Liverpool, to put the Germans down and to keep the rest of us alive and kicking to finish the job. HMS Beaver's here for VE Day, but what an everyday, every hour sight it was 50 years ago, a British warship coming up the Mersey. For Jack Bird, it was a chance to relive the past. A helmsman in the Atlantic convoys, they let him bring this modern warship into harbour.
Steer 144.
Steer 144.
Bearing on this contact now at red 5, continue to draw left.
Never expected this today.
On a ferry across the Mersey, he joined other veterans of the Atlantic War to pay homage to those who did not survive it. And after a moment's silence, as each remembered his own mates who'd died, they threw a small wreath into the river that had carried so many sailors away for the last time, men and boys.
But there was lots of young boys on those ships, you know. There was 14 and 16. There was 300 young lads went down with ships. I was one of the fortunate ones. I was never torpedoed.
They reckon there was over 20 U-boats attacking the convoy. It lasted for 8 days, and we lost in excess of 25 ships.
I sailed in the largest convoy of ships ever to cross the Atlantic, 142 merchant ships.
50 years ago, Gwen Frethny was one of the wrens working here, and this weekend she shared her memories with her grandchildren, Nicola and Tristan, showing them how it was done.
They would bring one out like that. That meant that another merchantman had been sunk. And it was a very sad moment because a lot of good men had lost their lives.
Was it all bad in the war then, Nana?
No, it certainly was not. We did have our bad times, but we also had our victories.
And winning back the Atlantic was Merseyside's own special victory. That's what they remember today, when this city kept its heart alive and our wartime bellies full. Well, Michael, you can see why we decided to hold our celebrations here in Liverpool tonight and the debt we owe to those people who fought that Atlantic War. That's why we feel very privileged to be here among them this evening.
Yes, it's a magnificent story, Mike. What are your plans for the rest of tonight?
Well, as you can hear and as you can see, we've got a 30-strong Royal Marine Band. We've got 150 guests. We've got half the ship's crew. We've got a rather large helicopter parked in the corner, all in the size of half a tennis court. So I think we're going to have a pretty stupendous evening.
Well, we'll share a bit of that later. Thanks a lot. Now, the Second World War is often called the People's War, and certainly the morale and the spirit of the ordinary civilian was a crucial ingredient of victory. Factory workers, air raid wardens and firefighters played their part. But it wasn't just an urban experience. The countryside and country people did their bit too. There was the Land Army and, of course, Dad's Army, the Home Guard. Every village has its wartime story to tell. And tonight, Joan Thirkettle is with the villagers of Wroxwell in Essex.
Well, Michael, what a weekend we've been having here. It's brought back so many memories for so many people here. And you know, the one thing that people remember above anything else is the spirit of togetherness, the sense of mutual support that was born during the war. This whole area was surrounded by American air bases, and the GIs, of course, would come into the village and have a look around. Well, when Bill Harrington came into Wroxwell, he found himself a bride. Bill, how did you and Nancy meet?
Well, I had had a date with one of her friends, and her friend didn't show up, so Nancy came along from a Girl Guides meeting, and she said, well, I'll go help you find her. And after 50 years, we still haven't found her.
And something very special happened in Roxwell that day, Nancy, when you were married.
Yes, it did. During the war, the church bells didn't ring because that was the signal for an invasion. And we were married right after the war ended. So the church bells rang for a wedding for the first time.
Well,
when
a
we were
great
married.
sentimental journey for you both.
Church with family and friends, Nancy and Bill Harrington renew the vows they took 50 years ago.
The Lord look kindly on you and give you peace all the days of your life.
Without the war, they would never have met, never have married. Nancy was one of 80,000 GI brides.
Present.
From the nearby base at Milden Hall, the American Air Force came to honour them. In May 1940, the Home Guard was set up, a volunteer force of 1.5 million men, the oldest of whom was 85. It became known as Dad's Army.
When I first started, we had a stick. We was lying in the hedge up the road waiting for the Germans to come with the stick. We used to have parades down the old mill on a Sunday morning. And we used to go out from there on exercises for a couple of hours. But we always finished at 12 o'clock.
Why?
The pubs were open.
And the Chequers pub, where they all met, is not much changed today. Food rationing didn't end until 1954. Cultivating every piece of land was imperative, and country people were often the envy of their city neighbours.
Everybody done their garden. Well, we had to do it for our food. We used to live on our gardens. Potatoes, greens, beans, peas, carrots, parsnips, everything you can think of. Lettuces, we used to have lettuces all the year round.
And when you consider this was a week's rations for one person, it was essential everybody pull their weight. Today, the over 60s had a taste of how it once was. The menu straight out of a wartime cookbook: rabbit pie, corned beef, hash. In Roxwell, it's been a weekend of fun and laughter. For young and old alike, the village spirit lives on.
Please don't take my sunshine away.
Well, Michael, I'm ready for a dance with Private Hyder here. But come back and join us just around midnight, because we're going to see this weekend out with a bang.
Well, Joan's not the only one having fun. I've been promised the last dance by Colin Wellland. Now, if you were too young to remember the real thing, then your image of wartime Britain is probably defined by Dad's Army, the bungling makeshift home guard, spivvy black marketeers, and of course the busybody air raid warden with his cry of "put that light out." Now, thanks to the character of Hodges in Dad's Army, the Jobsworth image of the ARP warden has never quite recovered. With us tonight is Hodges himself, Bill Pertwee. Bill, first let me say, you've been in great demand this week, haven't you, at village dues?
I have a bit, yes. Yes, I've been around quite a lot.
What have you been doing?
Well, I've been to sort of these evening gatherings. Went to a place in Surrey where it was rather like an aircraft hangar. A lot of people, very hot, and couldn't wait to get away. But it was very nice.
Sounds like a good party, at least.
Everybody was enjoying themselves, and they have been all over the place.
Yes.
I mean, the villages have all been decorated wonderfully, I think.
Yes.
It looks good in Surrey and Shamley Green and places like that. Wonderful. The town's not so much.
No,
Guildford.
the villages is the heart of it all, you're right.
Guildford in Surrey, 3 flags up in Guildford.
Shameful.
Shameful.
Right. Tell me about the air raid warden. What do you really think of the air raid warden and the image of the actual characters?
Well, I mean, he had to be a caricature, didn't he? Because he was Mannering's private Hitler. And he was a bumptious, loudmouth coward, you see. But actually, the real air raid wardens were very brave. I mean, they really were. We had an air raid warden in our place. They didn't have a great sense of humour. I must say, because we had Mr. Martin, who was a builder by day. At night, he'd put the tin hat on and walk about the streets. As soon as there was an air raid, and you'd hear the shrapnel hit his tin hat. He didn't take any notice of it, he didn't. Still walking up and down. Dad, get down the shelter, there's a raid on. Get down to the shelter, lads. We'd hear this going on, and we'd pop our heads out and say, we're in the shelter, Mr. Martin. Don't argue with me, get down the shelter. What's that? Ridiculous.
What about the other characters from Dad's army? I mean, the spivs, you know, the black market business. Did you have much knowledge of that?
Yes, I was involved a bit in the black market
very early
now
on. It can be told.
Yes, I was about, I suppose, about 14, maybe 15 then. We had the Canadians around us in Sussex. We moved 3 times. We were in Sussex for a part of it, near Dartford another, and Westcliff another part of the war. But in Sussex, the Canadians were over there getting ready for the Dieppe landings. And we used to fix them up with the girls.
Yes.
You know, and there would be the pecking order. The lieutenants and the captains would want to know the girls of the village who came from the rather nice families, and the corporals and privates. Well, they were quite happy with the chambermaids' daughters and things like that. But the colonels and the captains, you see, we used to arrange a meeting at the Six Bells pub. That was the place. I mean, it's the Six Bells pub. Go down, and it was like blind date, really. We could see if they liked them, and if they did, we'd get a tin of ham from them. We'd get a packet of sweet Caporal cigarettes, 200, or Camel cigarettes, or whatever it was.
There's a word for what you were. You mentioned the food, wartime food. We saw it there. It was. Did you like it?
Well, there was the Walton pie, which was the thing, you know. But there were some other dishes, you see, which people didn't know too much about. But they were made. There was pilchard layer cake, and fish and savoury custard, another one. Oh yes, beetroot jam. Everybody made beetroot jam, of course. But those two, the pilchard layer cake and the fish and savoury custard, we used to get that down and up again pretty quick.
What about spam? Yes, right. Spam, I remember, Colin. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember spam, yes.
Did you like it? Did you like the food in the wartime?
Yeah, well, I never knew any other food, did I? I mean, I remember looking at on the railway stations at these iron chocolate machines.
Oh, yes!
And wondered if they ever had chocolate in them.
Or what was a banana? Strange tube.
They raffled a banana at our school. Yeah, they brought one round and showed it to
you're going to make me cry in a moment. Bill, thanks. Back in a mo. We're going to head back now to London's West End to see how the festivities are measuring up at Piccadilly Circus. Judith, how's it going?
Well, it's going very well indeed, Michael, thank you. Well, you can hear you're having fun in the studio, so are we here, with young and old alike, people from throughout the United Kingdom and from many countries around the world. But I'm actually with 2 very special people now. You may remember we showed you a photograph earlier of 2 young ladies who were actually celebrating together at VE Day. Well, there was Molly, who now lives in Northern Ireland, and Terry, who actually lives in Canada. And they wanted to get together, and I know Molly went to great lengths to try and find Terry. She's come over specially, first time they're meeting for 50 years, from Vancouver. Right. So join these celebrations. Terry, welcome back to this country. What was this first meeting like after 50 years?
Very easy, wasn't it?
Wasn't it, yes?
I recognised her as soon as she came across the walk, and then we took off from there. That was it.
What were you talking about, Molly?
Oh, just how wonderful it was and how wild we were, because Terry didn't know that the war was over. She woke about 6 in the morning in the hostel. I had gone absent without leave and come in late. And I asked her what she was going to do today, and she said, I don't know. And I said, what? And the war is over? And we went mad.
Yeah, and it's all worth it then. I mean, what have your VE Day celebrations been like? What have you been up to?
Absolutely. Oh, everything. Just everything. Molly's been back to her camp where she came from. I've been back to Benson. I went back to Halton with my husband's been with me. We were married there 50 years ago last Christmas, so we had a golden wedding anniversary.
Oh, well, congratulations, and I'm very glad to see you both here tonight, I must say. I know, Molly, that you actually went to Buckingham Palace that day and saw the Queen. In fact, along with 1 million people, went down the Mall to see the King and his Queen and the young princesses. Well, in fact, that scene was reenacted at lunchtime today as the crowds waited to see the royal family on the balcony. In their tens of thousands, people flocked down London's Mall to watch the celebrations at Buckingham Palace. Through the palace gates came the Victory Parade, in all shapes and sizes. It was a grand day for reenacting one of the proudest moments in history. Out came the Queen Mother, the Queen and Princess Margaret. It was almost the same scene half a century ago. The young princesses, Elizabeth in her ATS uniform and Margaret, who was too young to wear one, sneaked out to soak up the atmosphere in front of the palace.
In a moment, we'll be going live to the memorial flight of the Royal Air Force. We'll see the Lancasters, the Spitfires and the Hurricanes, the men who fly the vintage aircraft today and the men who flew those magnificent machines in the war. Stay with our VE Day celebrations. Been immortalised as the few, the fighter pilots who in the summer of 1940 over southern skies defended the nation from the Luftwaffe in the Battle of Britain. It was perhaps the pivotal event of the war and certainly the most celebrated. The Spitfire and Hurricane pilots were the dashing heroes of that encounter, but no less heroic were the men and women of Bomber Command, crews and ground staff who destroyed the German war effort and ultimately brought Hitler to his knees. In all, nearly 60,000 airmen and women lost their lives in the war. Today, their memory is kept alive through the Royal Air Force's Memorial Flight. Tonight, the vintage planes and their crews are taking a well-earned break after a hectic weekend of flypasts up and down the country. Norman Rees is with them at RAF Northolt in Middlesex. Norman.
Well, their propellers may be shut down, but after their busiest weekend ever, these historic aircraft are still putting on a show. They've been rolled into this huge hangar here at Northolt to provide a colourful backdrop for the RAF victory celebrations. The men and women who are keeping these planes flying today are playing host to some of the wartime veterans who flew them 50 years ago and won us victory in the air. But the main priority for the memorial flight today was, of course, that flight over the balcony at Buckingham Palace. Paul Shenton was there flying a Hurricane. Paul, it must have been quite an experience.
Oh, it was, yeah. I was amazed at how many people were on the ground, and also being at the back of the stream, I could see all the other aircraft. And it just brought it home to me what a great privilege it was to say thank you.
Paul, thank you very much. And for the wartime aces here, of course, it's a chance to get close once again to the planes whose exploits they made famous. We've been out and about with other wartime veterans, including a former Spitfire pilot who's got even closer to the action.
We'll take off and then we'll go up to 2,000 feet and I'll trim it out. And then I'd like you to have a fly. Yeah. So I think it'll all come back to you.
Air Commodore Christopher Mount isn't just remembering the past, he's reliving it. He was 26 when he flew Spitfires in the Battle of Britain. Today, he's 81 and reaching for the skies again over southern England. 50 years on, he claims to be just a little rusty, but it doesn't stop a VE Day victory roll. He reckons the best fighter pilots are naturals.
You've got to be able to fly the aircraft quite naturally. If you didn't have to worry about handling the airplane, you could concentrate on doing your job of work, which is to look for the enemy aircraft and attack them, hopefully shoot them down.
Chris Mount's wartime buddy, Dennis David, is a natural. Pictured here in his Hurricane, Dennis shot down 20 enemy planes. Battle of Britain pilots, he says, were angry young men.
It's seeing these horrible black crosses flying over England. We hadn't asked them to come. And they were bombing my own mother, who lived in London. So there's another side to you as a man. It comes out, it's a form of aggression, and you have to get rid of it. And the way to get rid of it is against the enemy.
You're prepared for everything, and you must be right on your toes to keep out of trouble.
Jeff and pal Ron Woodin are celebrating VE Day in South Africa. The bonds between them now just as close as they were with the rest of their crew 50 years ago.
There was a bond there between us that is stronger than family in a way. And we just work together.
And this morning, it was another Lancaster that took pride of place in the flypast over London. No targets for the gunners on this VE Day, just a chance to enjoy the view. And what a view. Dead ahead, the Mall, the crowds, and Buckingham Palace.
Visual with Buckingham Palace, very good visual.
And it's the pride of the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, the Lancaster, a Hurricane, and a Spitfire that are, of course, here with us tonight in the hangar at Northolt. And what a day it's been for the pilot of that Lancaster, Flight Lieutenant Mike Chatterton, who's with me now, because standing alongside him is his father, John, who flew Lancasters during the war. John, I imagine never in your wildest dreams did you think that 50 years on you'd be seeing your son lead the Victory Flight Past on VE Day.
No, never. But I must say that at 75, there's nothing better calculated to keep the embers of your life glowing than to find your son doing something that you did yourself, living the best years of your life.
Of course, you were flying under entirely different circumstances, a very dangerous period of your life. What was the closest you ever got to being hit?
Well, the Germans, they knocked a few holes out of my Lancaster once or twice, but they actually never wounded me. The worst that happened to me was when we were shot at by our friendly forces as we were crossing the coast one night. I think it must have been the Navy.
The Navy? Well, I think we'll spare the Royal Navy their blushes there. Mike, a very special occasion for you. What did it mean to you to be at the controls of the Lancaster today?
Well, I think for the last few days especially, millions of people have been wanting to say and find a way of saying thank you to people of my father's generation for what they did in the war. And for me today, I feel very lucky and honoured to have been able to fly the Lancaster down the Mall and over Buckingham Palace in salute to the men and women of Bomber Command. And it's a gesture of gratitude for what they did for us.
Mike, John, thank you very much indeed. Well, the party continues here at RAF Northolt. A lot more wartime experiences to be shared and no doubt a glass or two to be raised. Michael?
Thank you, Norman. Yes, there'll be glasses raised all over. He was there with the veterans from the Memorial Flight, and young ones too. Now, we've asked Daddy many times what he did in the war, but asked Mummy what she did, and the answer is a heck of a lot. In fact, 9 out of 10 single women between the ages of 20 and 40 were involved in some way with the war effort. Millions of married women did their bit too. The war transformed women's lives and their outlook on life. Mavis Nicholson has been collecting stories about women in the war and asking, what did you do, Mummy?
This weekend, all over the country, women have been remembering their vital role. Not just in the armed forces, like these WAFs marching here through Southport, but also in the civilian services, like the Land Army, the WI, and the WVS. The call-up for women began in 1941, the first time women had ever been conscripted. But many women, even when working in great danger behind enemy lines, like Myra Roberts, were not given the recognition they deserved.
All the men, the navigator, the wireless operator, the second pilot and the pilot, they all had their wings on their uniform, but we never had it. We weren't classed as aircrew, but we were. In some ways, I thought, well, it's classed as the baggage and the pain.
It was difficult when I came home, I must admit, because there was Dad still there with the same ideas. Unfortunately, I'd grown up since then.
Although women were eager and willing to do their bit in the war, life was not made easy for them. There was still strong opposition from a man-based workforce.
It was very noisy for a start, and as I say about the chaps who were very much against us, they just didn't want us to do anything at all. They just resented us being there, you know.
My mummy worked at a place called Army Forms in Wandsworth, South London. It wasn't exciting work, filling envelopes, I think, but it was useful, and that's what she wanted to be. Another woman who played her part was a young air raid warden called Barbara Bells. Her ARP post was in the Bloomsbury area of London, just down the road from our studio. She was also an active Labour politician and later one of the doughtiest champions of women's rights of post-war politics. Today she's better known as Barbara Castle. Baroness Castle, to be precise, and I'm happy to say she's with us tonight. Barbara, have you been following today's events?
Oh yes, I have, but I missed the lunchtime one on you know, the Buckingham Palace, yes. Great scenes that everybody found so moving, because I was busy in a little village ceremony of my own in Ibston, where I live, in the Chiltern Hills. The parish council decided to have a little do, you know, glass of wine, sandwiches people had rushed to help make, and I thought, well, I must show friendly, otherwise they'll think, you know, she's being snooty or something. And you know, I was so glad I went, because it was surprising how many turned up. There weren't any paper hats or dancing or anything very wonderful in the way of food, but I don't know what, it was so warm. I suddenly, for the first time, felt I'd captured the atmosphere of this PE Day, because, all right, we all knew each other and we meet on the common walking our dogs, but we'd all bothered to turn out and come together.
And I wonder if it'll last, that's the thought. Now,
Yeah.
you were a woman air raid warden. Was it, as a woman, more difficult, do you think?
No. No, I don't. Actually, you know, Michael, the women in my air raid warden's post in Brunswick Square, Bloomsbury, were the strongest members of the team. True, we had a very lively Irish lad in charge of us. He was a great character and could be relied on to be humorous and rally morale when things are difficult. But his team were predominantly women. And I remember in particular, there were two maiden ladies who had a flat just on the edge of the square, and they were enrolled in our post. And the night of the great fire blitz on London, the incendiaries were showering round in our area too. They were the first out of the post. And before I could pick up my little bucket of sand and my shovel, you know, and follow them, they were up on the roof and on the balconies and cornices, scooping up the incendiaries. And you know, I remember how heartbroken they were when their firms decided to evacuate them. They'd be having the time of their lives.
Yes.
And of course, I remember one night when the all clear went early, about 3 in the morning. And so this Irish lad, he said, come on, let's get some beer. So he led us to the back door of the local public house, knocked up the publican and said, can you serve us with some? Can you let us have some cans of beer? So he did. And we trailed up to my little top attic flat in this Bloomsbury house, empty by now, everybody else had been evacuated. And we had a riotous little party.
You like
in the early
parties,
hours.
that's good.
No, we had, yes.
When you became an MP, and one of the first women in the cabinet, of course, did things really lead to changes for women? Was it really the beginning of an entirely new thing for women?
The war, you mean?
Yes.
Well, I tell you what, I think it gave them a little bit more courage to stand up for themselves, because I wouldn't have become MP for Blackburn unless the women's section had gone on strike, because of course the General Management Committee was dominantly male, and so they, when in '44 we were selecting candidates for the election, which obviously couldn't be far away because the war was clearly reaching its end, they drew up a short list of 6 all white male trade union sponsored nominations. And the women's section said, well, we're not going to make you any more cups of tea and write your envelopes for you unless we have a woman on the shortlist. So
And
it
the
wasn't
rest-
Barbara Betts, they'd never heard of me.
The rest was history. We'll be talking more later. After the break, I'll be talking to some of the people who kept the rest of us cheerful in those gloomy days, the wartime entertainers. So stand by for a burst of music and striptease, all part of our VE Day celebrations. The victory celebrations in London went on into the early hours. Some of us hoped it would never end. After years of blackout, rationing and nights spent in air raid shelters, this was the first real chance for people to let their hair down, and they took it. Today's celebrations have been pretty well non-stop too, and the crowds are still out on the streets tonight. Now, Judith Chalmers always knows where the good times are, and she's still keeping the revellers company in Piccadilly Circus. Look at that.
Do I? Well, fantastic. I suppose I really do know where there's a good party. The only trouble is, Mike, I'm not very good at jitterbugging, but I'm going to have a lesson or two afterwards. Very special people from the Roehampton Institute behind me, and also a gentleman called Victor Edward Day, VE Day, a significant day for you, Victor.
It is my birthday today.
50 years old,
50
very,
today,
very
yes.
happy returns.
Thanks
Did your
very much.
mother have her tongue in her cheek when she called you Victor Edward Day, do you think?
I think so, yes. I was going to be called Jack, but the doctor said VE, my surname's Day, so VE Day.
And you're enjoying the name?
I am, yes.
Jolly good. Nice to
certainly,
see
yeah.
you here tonight.
Thank you.
And another famous star we have with us, Humphrey Lyttelton. Welcome to you, Humphrey. You actually could tell us about your special happenings on VE night, can't you?
Not only at the night, during the day I was in front of the palace playing the trumpet, and I played right up against the railings and blasted in the direction of the royal family, for he's a jolly good fellow, aimed at the king. And then somebody came up with a handcart later in the evening, and I was pushed all the way around from St James's Street right up to Piccadilly Circus here, and then down the hill again and back to the palace.
All in a cart?
All in a cart, wobbling away, yes.
What was the atmosphere like that night?
Oh, it was tremendous, absolutely tremendous. It was just one huge burst of relief, really, and everybody was, you know, it was just one huge, big family, marvellous.
Everybody cheering you on, as you say. Well, I'm glad to say that you have your trumpet with you tonight, and we're going to cajole you, if we have to, please, for a few bars of that, if we may.
Okay, we'll try. When you're smiling, you know that one?
When you're smiling, folks. Right.
Ah, those luscious lips. Humph, that is, of course. Now, as a nation, we don't get many chances for genuine celebrations, coronations, royal weddings, the occasional Olympic medal. But we've certainly had a go today. All over Britain, veterans, their children and their grandchildren have been enjoying the VE Day festivities and remembering too. It was day 3 of festivities in Hyde Park in London, and the place was packed again. Hundreds danced the day away. Later, as the daylight faded and the mood changed, the Queen led the country in 2 minutes silence. At 8:38 this evening, people everywhere, at stations, airports, pubs and football matches, whatever they were doing, remembered those who had given their lives. Then the celebrations began all over again, as the Queen lit the imaginary blue touch paper at the Hyde Park beacon. That was the trigger for lasers across the capital. And the sign for beacons across Britain to be lit. During the day, the royal family had fanned out across the country. Prince Charles was in Cardiff to take part in a service of Thanksgiving at Llandaff Cathedral. The Princess Royal chatted with veterans in Edinburgh, where she'd attended a service at St Giles Cathedral. And the Duke of York was out and about across Northern Ireland during its VE Day celebrations. Throughout Britain, there were parades and marches like this one in Weymouth. Tonight, the firework finale in Hyde Park. Cascades of light filling the skies as the celebrations continued into the night. And it's not over yet. In Liverpool, Michael Nicholson is still enjoying the naval hospitality on HMS Beaver. Hello, Michael.
What we're trying to do in a small but very noisy way here this evening is to bring the young and the old together, something that's happening all over Britain tonight. Over by the helicopter is the Beaver's young skipper, Phil Jones, and the captain, merchantman captain Harry Trainer of the Atlantic convoys. I've got Mandy Hiscock here, who's a radar operator on Beaver, and our favourite wartime wren, Gwen Thesney. Old and new, old and young, 2 generations apart, grandparents and grandchildren, if you like, but coming together to celebrate tonight, but also coming together to remember tonight. And so, if you'll excuse me, we have some unfinished business. Come on, let's go in. Oh!
Somebody's having a very good time there. Do you know, people were kept amused during the war mostly by radio shows and the pictures. In fact, an average of 30 million people went to the cinema every week. It was the ultimate escape. Newspapers, on the other hand, were a rather sombre read, but there was one sensational exception. To most men, she was as real as Vera Lynn and as sexy as Betty Greyel. Jane, the Daily Mirror's naughty but nice cartoon strip heroine, became a national obsession. Her daily escapades were as talked about as any TV soap. In fact, she was based on a real character, Christobel Leighton Porter, who posed tastefully with her little dog Fritz for the Mirror's well-named cartoonist Norman Pett. Christobel, the real-life Jane, is alive and well, and she's with us tonight. It's lovely to see you.
Lovely
you made
to
a
be here.
little boy very happy, I must tell you. What are your memories of VE night?
Oh, VE night, there's nothing like it and never could be anything like it. I was playing in the theatre in Kilburn Empire, and we heard that the war had finished. We had an idea it was going to, but when it was actually announced, it was absolutely wonderful. So we thought we ought to do something a bit different because it was such a wonderful night. And so we decided that I would do a very naughty Britannia. And we got a big Union Jack, and somebody gave me a big stick for a pike, and we went down to the local fire brigade where they gave us a big brass fireman's hat for me to wear. And everybody sang Rule Britannia, and the audience came up on the stage. We had the most wonderful time. And then after that, when the show finished, I was staying at the Charing Cross Hotel, and I thought, well, I'd better get back and take the dog back and then go up to the West End. And we had a very, very old Vauxhall car, very little petrol, and we went across London as best we could. It took forever. And we picked up all sorts of people on the way. We had, I think, all the service people must have been in London. I don't think anybody was at their bases anywhere. And we had a crowd of servicemen on the roof, and they came through. But it didn't matter. And on the bonnet, my husband's colleague from one of his squadrons, a Canadian, had broken his leg, and he was sat with his leg, big 6-footer sat on the bonnet with this big plaster of Paris leg.
Wonderful images, these. Tell me, your act, you've mentioned, it was naughty, wasn't it? So, I mean, was it because people were more liberal during the war, let everyone enjoy themselves more?
I think probably it was. They needed something, something different, bright entertainment, and I think they were following the cartoon as well. And I do think that I had a little bit of prestige having the newspaper behind me, and it was nicely done. It wasn't blatant, and I didn't want to upset anybody. If you upset anybody in the audience, you haven't done anything very clever, you haven't been very clever. So it was kept quite nice. It got naughtier as the war went on. People relaxed a little bit more then.
What was it like living, though? Did you have fun in the war?
Lots and lots of fun, some wonderful, wonderful times. A good job we did, because it helped us to survive the rough times and the bombing and the freezing cold. There were always being electricity cuts. If you got an electric fire, it would suddenly go out. No cold unless you were bronchial or very old or very young, and always hungry. I have a big appetite and always have had.
Well, you had to keep your weight up, didn't you?
I did too.
Anyway, you gave us great joy. It was lovely to see you. Thank you. Now, in just over 8 minutes, at precisely a minute past midnight, the closing chimes of Big Ben will mark the exact moment of the ceasefire. So stay with us for that and a spectacular VE night finale. a day of celebration and relief, but for hundreds of thousands of servicemen and their families, it was not. For them, the war was far from over. Victory over Japan, VJ Day, didn't happen until August the 15th. There were still 100 days of fighting before World War truly gave way to world peace. And although victory in Europe was rightly a cause for rejoicing, it was a victory at a colossal price. For all the returning heroes, there were many who didn't come back. So before Big Ben marks the official moment of ceasefire in Europe, let's remember the terrible price that was paid. The 55 million people, friend and foe, who never saw that day.
Hostilities will end officially at 1 minute after midnight tonight, Tuesday the 8th of May.
We mark the ceasefire with our own special rendering of Rule Britannia. And if that song belonged anywhere tonight, it belonged here in Liverpool.
With the VE parties winding down, the flag flying above Liberation Square means another party's about to begin as the Channel Islands prepare for their big day. From Jersey, goodbye.
Well, on VE night 50 years ago, the dancing and the kissing and the music went on for hours. I have a feeling the same thing's going to be happening here in Piccadilly Circus. And now for all of us as we jitterbug away, bye-bye. Kiss. This is good. Con.
There goes your head,
Okay. Just about get under.
Just across London on VE night, one enduring image stood out. The sign of a V for victory beamed by searchlights into the sky above St Paul's Cathedral. Miraculously, St Paul's survived the Blitz intact. And for tonight's closing celebrations, we've recreated that image and the bells which rang out across the capital. And that brings us to the end of our show. Thanks to all our guests in the studio and around the country who joined us in the programme tonight. There's only one thing better than watching other people celebrating, and that's having a little celebration of your own. So we'll be raising a private glass or two to acknowledge all the people who fought and served to bring us peace and victory in Europe. Good night.